Imagine you're a rat, constantly running from the moment you gain self-awareness. You join the swarm, spilling out of school and onto society's crowded highways. Through hard work and diligent effort, you manage to board the train to success. You know that with enough striving, you can secure what you want: money in the bank, a sleek wardrobe, a respected social status. But somehow, it's never quite enough. We quickly grow accustomed to what we have, and once that initial satisfaction fades, the chase begins all over again. We often believe happiness lies in what we buy and how we entertain ourselves, and that work is nothing but a means to finance it all. So we swing between two extremes. At one end, we're stressed and overworked. At the other, we're bored and self-indulgent. It begs the question, what is happiness really? Can we ever escape this uneasy cycle? In 2002, a Harvard psychology professor introduced an elective course focused on how to become happier. At first, only 8 students enrolled, and 2 of them dropped out right away. But then things took a surprising turn. A year later, enrollment shot up to 380. Another semester passed, and that number soared to 855, making it the most popular course in all of Harvard. Students even brought their families, and the media showed up as well. So, what exactly did this course cover? If it were nothing but empty motivational slogans, would Harvard students have flocked to it like that? The professor who created this course is Tal Ben-Shahar. Because the class made such a huge impact, he organized the lessons he taught into the book we're discussing today, Happier. His hope is that this book can help both you and me find balance in life, instead of constantly teetering between extremes. Let's dive right in. When the author was younger, he had a big dream to win a national championship in his home country of Israel. To prepare, he had to strictly control his diet, avoid junk food altogether, and push himself through intense daily training. For a young person, giving up junk food was no small sacrifice. So, he promised himself a reward. After the competition, he would treat himself to 4 big hamburgers. As it turned out, he did win the national title. Right after the event, he rushed to his favorite burger joint and got his hands on those 4 steaming hot burgers. But holding them, he suddenly realized he didn't feel the happiness he'd expected. It all felt rather ordinary. And later that night, staring at his trophy in his bedroom, he felt a wave of sadness and a sense of emptiness, like now that his goal was achieved, his life had lost its purpose. He hadn't actually found joy in the moment he thought would bring it. This experience sparked his deep interest in the nature of happiness. He committed himself to understanding what happiness really is and how we can become happier. But what is happiness, exactly? Defining happiness is a profoundly challenging question. Humanity has never reached a universal consensus. Philosophers throughout history have tried to answer it, yet we still don't have a neat, standard definition. Still, the author argues, we can be sure of one thing. Happiness is not just a goal. After all, we constantly discuss how to attain happiness, and if it were a mere endpoint, that conversation wouldn't even be necessary. If we treat happiness as a goal to be pursued, the author suggests, it's worth questioning this very premise. Framing it as achieved happiness vs. unachieved happiness oversimplifies things. Reality isn't a binary. Instead, the author believes we should ask, how can we become happier, focusing on the process rather than some final destination? Most of us already have our own ways, however small, of trying to make our lives happier. Think about it for a moment. What do you personally do to increase your happiness? Drawing from the youthful experience of buying 4 hamburgers, the author introduces different mindsets toward happiness. The first is the hedonistic mindset. Hedonism emphasizes immediate gratification, satisfying your desires right now, while ignoring the long-term negative consequences. People with this mindset equate effort and struggle with pain, and see happiness as nothing more than fleeting pleasure or a quick dopamine hit. They avoid anything that feels like hard work. This hedonistic approach might lead you, after a day of work or class, to flop on the couch, turn on the TV, and indulge in junk food, forgetting about exercise, reading. While it may feel good in the moment, it ultimately damages your future well-being. And the so-called happiness you get isn't really happiness at all, it's just sensory stimulation. As discussed in books like Dopamine Nation, these quick hits of pleasure become less and less satisfying, pushing you to consume more. Maybe what used to be half an hour of short videos becomes a whole night of mindless scrolling. This slippery slope can lead to addictive behaviors, even serious ones like substance abuse. The second mindset the author describes is the busy striver. Unlike hedonists, who sacrifice future happiness for present pleasure, busy strivers sacrifice their present happiness for the hope of future happiness. They get caught in an illusion. Escaping current pain feels like relief, and they mistake that relief for true joy. But it's not real happiness, it's just the absence of suffering. Imagine slaves on a plantation who are suddenly given one day off each week. They're thrilled because they don't have to pick cotton or face the whip on that day. But is that genuine happiness? Not really, it's only removing pain that shouldn't have been there in the first place. For those with the busy striver mindset, even when they reach their goals, they quickly return to feeling the same emptiness. That's why many people, after achieving fame or wealth, still feel hollow. Like the author and his for hamburgers, once the goal is achieved, there's often no real joy there. On top of that, achieving a goal is just a brief moment. If you spend most of your life in the busy striver mode enduring hardship now for a promised future happiness, you might never actually enjoy true happiness. Life is uncertain, and there's no guarantee you'll live long enough to reach that future moment of joy. Isn't it tragic to postpone happiness indefinitely? This, then, is the busy striver mindset. The third mindset is what the author calls nihilistic, which is even more extreme than the previous two. Instead of ignoring the future or ignoring the present, the nihilist approach ignores both. It assumes that no matter what we do now or in the future, we can't be truly happy. In psychological terms, this is known as learned helplessness. To understand learned helplessness, let's look at a rather disturbing experiment involving dogs. Researchers placed dogs into different cages. Some had doors they could open, others were locked shut. Then they administered electric shocks. The dogs in cages they could open would quickly escape after the shock. But the dogs in cages that couldn't be opened had no choice but to endure the shocks. Over time, when all the dogs were placed in an open space and shocked again, the dogs that had once been able to escape ran away immediately. But the dogs that had learned they couldn't escape those from the locked cages didn't even try to run when shocked in an open area. They just lay there, whining in distress. This is learned helplessness. After repeated failures, they stopped believing any action could change their situation. Humans can experience the same feeling. For example, I have a friend who, after repeated relationship setbacks, concluded, "Women are all the same, none of them are any good." He's given up on the idea that he can improve his situation or find happiness. This is exactly what the author calls the nihilistic mindset. In the author's view, none of these three mindsets, hedonistic, busy striver, or nihilistic, can bring lasting happiness. So what's the alternative? The fourth approach is what he calls the happiness-oriented mindset. This means balancing the enjoyment of the present with actions that benefit our future. We must learn to appreciate right now while investing in what's to come. We'll talk more about how to do this in the upcoming sections. Keep in mind, these four models aren't labels for four specific types of people, but rather four different ways of thinking about and responding to life's challenges. So, there's no need to label ourselves or others as nihilistic or hedonistic. Under certain circumstances, any one of us can slip into these mindsets. That's why it's crucial to stay aware of which approach we're taking toward life, so we can make the right adjustments when needed. Next, let's talk about how to develop a happiness-oriented mindset. The original author points out that happiness is a combination of pleasure and meaning. This reminds me of the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard's claim, "Boredom is the root of all evil." He's not talking about the trivial boredom of waiting for an elevator. He's referring to a deeper, more existential boredom that comes from a lack of purpose or direction into a sense of aimlessness. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi also noted in Flow that a lack of meaningful, Focused goals leaves us feeling dissatisfied and frustrated, potentially triggering negative behaviors and emotions. In other words, boredom on a large scale is the source of countless problems. If we find something genuinely interesting and meaningful to invest our time and energy in, we're far more likely to avoid these pitfalls. If we want to be happier, doing something meaningful is essential. Now, you might wonder, aren't the busy strivers also doing meaningful things? So how do we avoid falling into that trap? According to the author, the key is to establish what he calls a vocation, genuine calling that's truly your own. Such a vocation has two key elements. First, it must align harmoniously with your sense of self. Second, it must present challenges and opportunities for growth. If the activities we engage in meet these two criteria, we're far more likely to experience deeper, longer-lasting happiness. Of course, factors like family and close relationships also influence our happiness. We'll get to that later. For now, let's focus on the idea of a vocation. Notice I said vocation and not just job. So what's the difference? The author references psychologist Amy Rezeniewski's theory of work orientations. She suggests that people generally have three attitudes toward their work. First one is job. Work is merely a means to earn money. You might not like it, but you do it for the paycheck. You basically live for the moment. You can clock out. Second one is career. In addition to making money, you also seek social status, recognition, promotions, and influence. Financial security and advancement matter here. Third one is calling. When someone regards their work as a calling, the work itself becomes a self-congruent goal, something that aligns with one's inner values and sense of purpose. Although a calling may also bring money and status, those aren't the main motivators. Instead, it's about a deeper sense of purpose and value. When you reach this level where what you do resonates with your true self and yields a meaningful sense of contribution, then you've found a true vocation, rather than just a job. During my time as a YouTuber, I've also met other creators who left their old, uninspiring jobs to pursue their true passions. Talking to them, realize that while earnings matter, what really drives us is the sense of mission and genuine enthusiasm. After all, of our lives are spent working, so it's crucial that work brings us happiness. That means we need to think about how to infuse our current jobs with a sense of purpose or, if needed, seek out work that naturally provides it. The deeper value of having a sense of mission lies in having a goal that's in harmony with our true selves. How do we set these self-congruent goals? First, understand that they differ from ordinary goals. Many of our goals revolve around achieving external approval, getting into a prestigious university, or landing a good job. But how many of these dreams come from our own hearts, and how many are simply what society says we should strive for? A self-congruent goal stems from our own deeply held values, allowing us to feel genuine joy as we work toward it. In pursuing such a goal, we control our own future, rather than feeling pushed along by work or study. If a goal is imposed by society, we risk slipping into that busy striver mindset. The author emphasizes that goals should be chosen, not forced upon us. We could boast about them if we wanted. But here's the catch. How many people actually work in fields they truly enjoy and have achieved that state of inner harmony? To answer this, we need to explore the prevailing social attitudes toward work. You'll find that most views focus on what we can do, not what we want to do. And that's why it's so tough to find work that genuinely interests us. This brings us to the origin of universities. Modern universities first took shape in capitalist countries, and their development is closely tied to the Industrial Revolution. Why the Industrial Revolution? Because factories, set up by capitalists, grew in scale and complexity. They needed more specialized knowledge and better management. Ordinary workers alone couldn't sustain a business's growth. So capitalists needed professionals with expert skills. To nurture this talent, capitalists began funding or founding institutions of higher learning universities. These universities divided education into specialized fields aligned with market demands, ensuring a steady stream of skilled workers ready to be absorbed by industry. So, the entire system is designed for the smooth functioning of the economic machine, not for our personal happiness. Once you understand this, it becomes clear that achieving a self-congruent goal demands effort. Simply following society's standards likely won't cut it. How do we set such self-congruent goals? The author suggests a three-step process. Step 1. Set a long-term goal. This is your North Star. It could span anywhere from 1 year to 30 years. Maybe it's a 1-year fitness plan, dance program, or a 10-year career path. The key is that it's something you genuinely want. For example, my long-term goal, Woody's, is to reach 10,000 subscribers within a year and go full-time as a content creator. To achieve this, I need to consistently read, create videos, and of course, I'd be grateful for your likes and subscriptions. Step 2. Define short-term goals. A long-term goal isn't enough if you keep waiting for the right conditions to start. If you say, I'll start working out when the new gym near my place opens, you'll never work out. If you say, I'll learn an instrument when I'm less busy at work, you'll never learn. Short-term goals break down your long-term ambition into manageable pieces, ensuring you have a clear plan of action. For example, if I want to hit 10,000 subscribers in a year, I need to regularly upload quality content. That means setting a short-term goal of reading at least 3 books a month and producing 3 video episodes based on what I've learned. Step 3. Create an action plan with your short-term goals in place. You need a concrete action plan, your daily and weekly schedule. When will you read? When will you draft scripts? When will you film? Organize your life around your self-congruent goals. That doesn't mean being rigid or mechanical. You can always adjust as needed. The main point is to prevent outside influences from pushing you toward goals that don't align with your true self. Think about it. How many times have you wasted time doing things just to maintain relationships or avoid awkwardness, like accompanying someone to the bank, following a colleague's trivial request, or attending pointless social events? Without self-congruent goals, it's easy to let others hijack your precious time. If you don't protect your time, someone else will use it up. Now, you might ask, what if I haven't found something I genuinely want to do yet? Don't worry, we'll talk about how to handle that situation next. The author offers a solution known as the MPS model, which stands for meaning, passion, and strengths. When we're trying to find a goal that truly resonates with our inner selves, we need to ask ourselves 3 sets of questions, one after another. First, we have to think about meaning. What kind of activities would give us a real sense of purpose and value? Next, we consider what we're passionate about. What do we genuinely enjoy doing that makes us happy? Finally, we look at our strengths. What are we actually good at? These aren't questions we can just casually think about for a second and be done with. We need to seriously reflect on them, maybe even write things down or talk it out, until we reach some honest answers. Once we figure out what feels meaningful, what brings us joy, and where our natural abilities lie, the next step is to see if there's any kind of work that brings all 3 together. For me, for instance, I find meaning in things like starting my own projects, exploring music, and reading books. I feel genuine happiness when I'm listening to music, diving into a good story, watching movies, or try out something completely new. And my advantage, my strong point seems to be that I can take what I've learned and share it with others in a way they can understand. Putting all this together led me to become a knowledge-focused content creator. In that role, I can explore entrepreneurship, keep on reading and learning, and then pass what I've discovered along to everyone watching. If someone out there still can't figure out what feels meaningful, can't pinpoint what they love doing, or can't identify any clear strengths, it might mean they just haven't tried enough different things yet. Thinking alone won't cut it. At that point, you have to get up, get out, and experiment. Embrace the trial and error process without worrying about whether it's going to pay off immediately. This idea also appears in the book Cognitive Awakening. Taking action, even without guaranteed returns, is often how we discover what truly matters to us. In many cases, this feeling of not knowing what we're interested in is especially common among students. It's closely tied to the way we separate academic learning from real-world practice. Schools worry about getting tangled up with outside companies and organizations, afraid of potential disputes, so they tend to keep students isolated in their own little ivory towers. Many of the activities they organize have nothing to do with helping students integrate into society or understand the real world. They're often geared toward boosting some sort of comprehensive assessment score or just winning awards. Even so-called entrepreneurship competitions are usually just PowerPoint presentations, not actual attempts at starting a business. They're still focused on grades and assessments. If a student genuinely tries to launch a real company, the school might even get nervous about what could happen next and end up not supporting it. I'm speaking from my own experience here. Of course, that's just the objective environment. We have to take responsibility for our own lives. If you're a student, try to connect with society as early as possible. Experiment with different things, and figure out what's meaningful, what you enjoy, and where your strengths lie. That's how you find your true calling, and set a self-congruent goal for your work life. So, we've talked about building a career, and setting the right kind of goals. Next, let's explore how to nurture happy, intimate relationships. The author points out that a lot of people believe all you need is to meet the right person, rather than actively working on improving the relationship itself. This idea often comes from literature and movies, which focus too much on the journey of finding true love, rather than on the ongoing effort both partners need to invest in each other. In films, once the couple finally comes together after countless trials, the movie just ends right there. Think of Disney movies. The prince and princess live happily ever after, or so they say, but we never get to see what happens next. That part of the story, the part about working on the relationship day in and day out, is actually the most important, and yet, it's left untold. If we put all our hope in simply finding the right person, our tolerance for the inevitable ups and downs in a relationship becomes really low. The moment our partner does something we don't like, or an argument flares up, we start to doubt if they're really the one, after all. It leads many people to keep changing partners, but never truly experience a happy, fulfilling relationship. We'll talk more about books that explore this topic in depth in the future. After discussing both our careers and our intimate relationships, we might still run into a lingering issue. Even if we want to chase our own goals and find happiness, we often find ourselves held back by circumstances beyond our control, forced to do things that cause us pain or discomfort. If we have to support our family, sometimes we just can't afford to quit that boring, but well-paying job. In moments like these, what should we do? The author believes that painful and tedious tasks are something we can never completely avoid, not even when we're doing something we truly enjoy. Think about gamers who sometimes find their favorite game boring and feel stuck at a certain rank, growing restless and anxious. If even that can happen with things we love, how could it not happen with the realities of work and life? Take me as an example. I love reading and sharing knowledge, but I absolutely hate editing videos and doing all the post-production work. Still, it's something I can't escape if I want to keep making content as a creator. There are very few jobs that are 100% pure and perfect. We're bound to run into some tasks we dislike. That's why the author says we shouldn't worry too much about life becoming dull or challenging. Instead, we need to worry about our own attitude. We have to remind ourselves why we're doing what we do, to keep that self-congruent goal in mind. If we don't, we might forget that we actually have the time and resources to pursue our goals, and still end up spending all our energy on things we don't even like. Our brains naturally want to juggle many things at once, and without control, we become busier and more anxious. There will always be endless meetings and never-ending tasks. This is why having a self-congruent goal matters so much. It stops us from wasting our entire lives on things that can't bring us real happiness, and it lets us return to a state of contentment whenever we're ready. Another way to keep our spirits up, even in difficult times, is to create what the author calls a happiness catalyst. Basically, that means adding some small, meaningful activities into our lives that we actively engage in. It can't be something passive like mindlessly watching videos after work. That might leave us feeling empty and more anxious. Instead, it should be something you actually participate in, like meeting up with a friend once a week, making yourself a cup of coffee every morning, or doing half an hour of yoga at sunrise. These small habits give us something to look forward to, even during a period of our lives when we don't have many choices. Personally, my happiness catalyst is going for a run every evening. No matter how hard or exhausting my day has been, as soon as I start running, a few kilometers in, I feel a sense of achievement and find myself better able to face my challenges. Never underestimate these small things. They're crucial for nurturing our sense of happiness. There's one more method we can try: gratitude meditation. It's a bit different from normal meditation. Regular meditation is all about focusing on your breath, your body, and your thoughts. Gratitude meditation involves asking yourself, during that quiet, meditative state, what makes me feel happy? The trick is not to force an answer. Just toss that question into your mind like a pebble into a still lake, and observe whatever ripples appear without trying to influence them. Research shows that practicing gratitude meditation can significantly increase our sense of happiness. It turns out that over a longer period, our sense of happiness and emotional state tend to remain relatively stable. Even when our moods fluctuate, we usually end up returning to our original set point. Some people try to use external stimuli, like shopping and spending, to stir up their emotions and feel better, but that approach often backfires. It can lead to dependence on material things and put you under financial strain. The author refers to a study by psychologist David Scarr, which suggests that our happiness mainly depends on three factors: our genetic makeup, the environmental conditions related to happiness, and the actions we can take to achieve it. Genetics really can play a crucial role. Take Ernest Hemingway as an example. He was undoubtedly one of the most famous American writers of the 20th century. Yet he ended up taking his own life in 1961 due to a combination of mental health issues, family problems, and creative struggles. His father and brother also suffered from depression, and both died by suicide. Clearly, genetics can influence our happiness. The second factor, environment, also matters. Living in a war-torn region or having relatives with substance abuse issues can take a serious toll on our well-being. But these two factors, genetics and environment, are beyond our control. What we can control are the actions we take to cultivate happiness. The author believes there's no point comparing who's happier than whom because everyone's starting conditions are different. The only meaningful comparison is with our own past selves, to see if we're happier now than we once were. Stephen Covey, in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, points out that our mental frameworks, what we center our lives around, determine the quality of our lives. He mentions several common focal points, like centering everything around family, a partner, children, a career, friends, or even ourselves. Each of these approaches has inherent problems. Prioritizing family too much might harm our career. Putting children first might strain our relationship with our partner. Focusing on a career might damage our home life. And being totally self-centered might hurt everyone around us. Besides, all these external factors, family, partner, children, career, friends, can change or even disappear. If we stake our happiness on them, we become fragile. A person who centers their whole existence on family might collapse if the family unit breaks down. Someone who centers everything around a partner might be devastated by divorce. When these things happen, some people resort to desperate acts. If we put our children at the center and they fail to meet our expectations, we risk frustration, anxiety, and conflict that can damage our relationship with them. None of these focal points are without problems. Covey's answer is that we should center our lives on principles. In fact, next week I plan to talk about Covey's book, so stay tuned. Coming back to this book, the author also offers a principle: embrace a happiness-oriented mindset, enjoy the present while doing things that benefit your future. Standing at the crossroads of the here and now and what's meaningful, We have to accept that no single book can answer all our questions about happiness. But this one does give us some genuinely valuable principles we can apply in our own lives, or use as a guide to explore even more ideas. I hope this video gave you some new ways of thinking about happiness. Thanks so much for watching until the end. We've hit another reading milestone together. I'm Pink Woody, a new YouTuber who loves sharing knowledge, and I'm aiming for us to read 30 great books together each year. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in our next book.